All right, so here is what I'd like to see in the September updates for OPR. Um, they are mainly going to focus on units and armies, and I think that's great. I can't wait to see what they come up with, try it out, and of course complain about it. But there's a couple things that, and I'm not totally so I'm going to try practicing with some friends if they're willing to try these new rules. But I think that there should be an intermediate set of rules that are free. And the reason that is because if I want to make a battle report on YouTube, I can really only use the basic rules and explain them. If I start playing with advanced rules, people that are just starting out or want to get involved or whatever, they're not going to know what I'm talking about. And there are people that play 40K that I believe do not like the oversimplification of these rules. They want to have a little bit more crunchiness. Also, I do believe that the rules as they stand are not complete for the basic rules. When you play certain armies, they're going to be massively handicapped. I.e., the high elf fleets. A they're a combined army. They have a lot of good shooty and melee units combined, the hybrid units, and so the hybrid tax kills them. They are just not fun to play with the basic rules. They're not competitive, and if you're going to do a tournament, you need to have the armies be as competitive as possible. That's what OPR is all about. At least that's what it should be. That they want every single army to be competitive, to be fun, to be thematic, all that stuff. They don't have the hang-ups that companies that are trying to sell you models have, where they want the latest models that come out to be the new hotness that everybody wants. All right, so let's get into it. So we have, I'd like to make the maneuvers free, especially 3 maneuvers. These are variations on what is actually in the rule booklet. They're not exactly what's in the rule booklet for the advance. The Overwatch, you can advance. So you can, normally you can take your 6-inch move and then put an Overwatch token or dice on there, and then you can interrupt somebody else's move and get 1 attack at -1. This will allow slower units that maybe you have an army that has fewer units to still have something to do. So these elite armies, they can still feel like you're doing something instead of you have to get in their face and so forth. You can play for position. I think it'll make it a better game. Recovery. The Shaken token is a huge penalty. It's too much. And so to mitigate it, I think you should be able to get rid of Shaken token, and basically you're just going to get -1 on your abilities, and you get half speed. So or your speed gets cut by a factor. So for instance, if you want to shoot at somebody, you have to hold, and then your shooting will be at a -1, but then you get to take the token off. Okay, so you get to at least do some damage. You don't just have to sit there and eat it. If you want to assault, you can charge at advanced speed. So normal units can move 6 inches. So if somebody got in your face and beat you up, and now you are trying to recover, you can still charge them back. They got to be within that advanced speed, 6 inches usually. You get -1 on all your attacks. And I'm thinking about maybe you should get -1 on defense as well, to risk you're getting into a chance that you're going to get shaken again. You should be shaken again. If you're shaken and you charge, you should be less effective, but at least you should be able to do something. You're probably going to get run off the board. This is a suicide mission, whatever. I think that -1 defense does make sense. Random activations. This is a bolt action rule. You put your how many units you have into a bag, whether it's tokens or dice. I prefer dice so that you can use those special maneuvers. I wish that they would make the dice on the OPR maneuver dice. I think that would be awesome. And if your color gets picked, then you get to activate a unit. And nobody knows who's going to go next, so you can't really hold certain things back because it's random. I like this. I think it should be in the intermediate rules, and yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Base contact rules. This was brought up by Spaceman. I had read the rules and I was reading it wrong because this is what I thought the rules were, and so therefore I think this is what it should be. Any figure within 2 inches of an enemy figure, any figure touching an enemy figure, that's the rules in the rule booklet. I believe you should also any figure in base contact with a friendly model that's in base contact with an enemy is also considered to be in base contact. This gives you that second row, and let me just show you here on this screen. So let's say we've got these guys coming in and they're charging. This guy is within 2 inches and this guy is in base contact with the other archer, which is in base contact with the tank. Then all three can swing. Okay, this will help that units don't, if you've got a whole bunch of units and they can't quite reach, they can't get within 2 inches, but they can get within base contact. This helps with cavalry. This helps with monsters, whatever the situation is. It's a simple rule. It's very easy as long as you're in base contact with a unit that is in base contact with the enemy. Okay, so for instance, this will be a little bit more clear. So that would work. All three can now hit. All right. Of course, one model must be in base contact for the charge to be completed. If you don't have somebody that can reach, then it doesn't matter. Shooting through or near friendly forces. I think this should be added because, especially in regiments, things can get in the way very easily. I think you should be allowed to shoot through a friendly unit. So that would be allowed, but for every one that you roll, the friendly unit takes a hit. Same thing goes for any unit within 3 inches. If you're nearby, any ones would also hit that unit. If there's multiple units, each unit will take a hit. Okay, so the more people are around, so let's say there's 2 units and they're within 3 inches, you roll a 1, both units take a hit. Okay, or 3 units, whatever it is. So you're discouraged from shooting at crowded units. And then if a unit is in the way and within 3 inches, then it's -1 to attack, and the friendly unit gets hit on a 1 or 2. So that's a fairly simple way to get around, units that are close by. I'm not married to the 3-inch rule. We could scratch that. But shooting through should be allowed. Makes it a lot easier to just get units into action. I want units to have something to do at all times, but there will be a risk for messing up your maneuvers. Okay? And then monsters and vehicles. Monsters and vehicles, I think, have an unfair advantage. When they are in a game, they are very powerful. If you don't have anything to deal with them, then you're just in trouble. So I think there should be some tactics, some disadvantages to the monsters, and this is what I would do. At first, they would be defined as a model that has 6 or more wounds, or is a non-hero unit with more than 6 wounds, or with 6 wounds. So there's a lot of creatures and vehicles that have 6 wounds. They're not heroes. Heroes usually make them at least 9. Basically, if you can't put it into a transport, then you've got a monster or vehicle. Okay. These units get -1 defense on any flank rear charges as defined by their front line. So let me show you what I mean by that. So here we got our our archers. Let me zoom out a little bit. They're all shooting. This one, we are using the front facing of the unit. Anything in front of that is going to be normal. Anything totally behind it will the defense gets knocked down by 1. So this guy's normal. This guy's normal, even though he's straddling the line. He's a normal attack. Anybody clearly behind the front will get a -1 to their defense. So it's a little bit easier to, if you use tactics. Most vehicles and monsters either have a 3 or 2 defense. Usually it's a 2. So now it becomes a 3. Fairly simple, I think, to put into place. Also, units that are 50% damage. So if you got 6 wounds and it's now got 3 wounds, you get -2 move, -1 on attack and defense. And if it's 75% or more, so it could be equal to 75, so if you got a 12 wound and you got 9 wounds on it, then it gets -4 move and -2 on the attack and defense. This is a modification of what's in the advanced rules. I feel that what's in the advanced rules is too complex. It's a big old chart that has a logical thing, but it's a lot to keep track of. And it doesn't take into account smaller versus larger vehicles or monsters. I feel like the smaller monsters don't get as penalized as much as the bigger monsters. And I think it should just be based on percentage and just do it very simple. You get 50%, then it's this thing here, 75 gets double, and that's it. Just 2 things you have to remember. I think that would make it a lot easier to keep track of. And that's it. That's all I got for my rules that I would like to see. At least an intermediate free rules that have something like this in there, so that it will make the lists more competitive, more units more competitive, and make the game just a little bit more interesting. It's already great. The basic rules are a lot of fun, but I think we could use a little, a basic rules +1 type of deal, where you've got, the monsters have a little bit extra. You can shoot through your friendly forces. The base cut. This has to be done. I insist that OPR puts this in the basic rules, not even intermediate. This is a basic rule, and it's got to be in there. It's really frustrating a lot of players to not have this rule in there. And random activations, that can be intermediate, optional, whatever. That's just something that I thought would be cool to put into the intermediate rules, some variation of it. But Bolt Action uses it. They clearly copied it off of Bolt Action. I think it should just be out in the open in intermediate rules. And then the maneuvers definitely should be an intermediate. You don't have to have the 6 or 7 or 8, whatever the rules are for the advanced optional rules. You can have an intermediate maneuver rules, 3 maneuvers here that I think, and these are a little bit different than what they have in the advanced rules. I think these make it a little bit easier to just get things into, just give everybody something to do, even if they're shaken. They take a penalty, but the penalty is not super harsh where they're totally knocked out. They sort of did this with the firefight, with the skirmish ones, where it used to be that if something is shaken and then gets attacked again, close combat, it's immediately destroyed. It doesn't have a chance. They modified it to give you a chance to stay in the fight, and I think this is also, they need to modify their recovery so that you don't lose a whole turn, that you lose effectiveness on your next turn. And keep all the other shaken rules. If somebody hits you and hits you again, then yeah, all those rules that really hurt will start to come in play. But right now, a lot of times, people will just leave a shaken unit alone and start going after other units when you should be pressing the attack. So it feels a little off the way that it's done. But if you have a recovery rule where your movement is restricted and you get penalties for your attack and defense, I think would be sufficient, something like that. And of course, assault, the hybrid tax is too much. It's really killing a lot of armies. Got to have some sort of assault rule in there where you can use all your attacks on one. That was one thing that really shocked me about OPR, was that when you moved a unit, you either shot or charged, and there was no two phases on that. So I really wish they would change that, give us an intermediate section that is free, that we all can accept and start putting into our tournaments, because really the tournament scene needs a little bit extra, I think, in order to, and I don't know, it just feels like it needs a little extra boost. So tell me what you think. Am I way off base here? Do some of these rules make sense to you, and that they definitely should be? Some of these should be a different variation maybe that you have an idea for? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you next time.